Hi, everyone. This is Amy, and I am so excited to be sharing Chapter 16, Philadelphia of the Trumpet of the Swan. You know, Lewis is quite a swan. He has many talents, and I can't wait to find out what happens. I know that he's a great success where he is in Boston, but the chapter says Philadelphia, so I am guessing he is headed to Philadelphia. But the best way to find out is to dive in. So let's begin. Open your books to page 166. Lewis worked all the last week of September for the Swan Boat Man in the Boston Public Garden. He was a great success and was becoming famous. On Saturday, the boatman paid him $100 in cash, which Lewis placed carefully in his money bag. The boatman, after paying the first night's bill at the Ritz Carlton, decided to let Lewis sleep on the lake instead of the hotel, and this suited Lewis better. He slept with the ducks and geese on the lake, floating gracefully on the surface of the water, his head tucked under his wing. Lewis took good care of his trumpet. He kept it polished, and once a week he cleaned the spit out of it. He learned new songs whenever he could by listening to people's radios and by attending concerts. He was very good at remembering music he had heard. He was really a natural born musician, or in this case, a naturally hatched musician. One day he liked One song he liked was Beautiful Dreamer, Wake Unto Me. Whenever he played it, he thought of Serena, and always when he finished it, the passengers on the swan boat clapped loudly and cheered. Lewis liked applause. It made him feel lighthearted and gay. Sometimes at the end of the afternoon, Lewis played Now the Day is Over. He made it sound sweet and sad. One afternoon, when he was leading the last trip of the day, he played the Cradle Song by Brahms. The passengers sang the words, lullaby and good night, with roses bedight. A boy in the front seat of the boat pulled out an air rifle from under his jacket and began shooting BB shots at Lewis's trumpet. Whenever a shot hit the horn, it was making a pinging sound. So the cradle song sounded something like this: lullaby ping and good night ping, with roses bedight ping. Hmm. The children on the boat roared with laughter when they heard this, but the grown up passengers were angry. One of them seized the boy's rifle. Another went home that night and wrote a letter to the Boston Globe urging a stronger gun control law. On some afternoons at the end of the day, people gathered on the shores of the lake to listen while Lewis played taps. It was a peaceful scene, a memorable hour. The Swan boat had never enjoyed such popularity or made such a lot of money for the owner, but Lewis knew that the boats would not run all winter. In a few days, the boats would be hauled out for the season to wait quietly for the arrival of spring. One day, when Lewis was waiting for the boat to take its passengers aboard, a Western Union messenger boy appeared on a bicycle. I have a telegram for the Swan, he said. The boatman seemed surprised, but took the telegram and handed it to Lewis, who opened it promptly. It was from a man in Philadelphia. The message said, can offer you $500 a week for nightclub spot, 10-week engagement. Please reply. Signed, Abe, Lucky Lucas. Hotel Nemo. Lewis did some quick figuring. $500 a week for 10 weeks? That was $5,000. $5,000 would easily pay for his father's debt to the music store. He took his slate and wrote, offer accepted, arrive tomorrow, meet me at Bird Lake in the zoo. Splashdown will be at 4:52 p.m. Hope this will be a convenient time for you. Lewis showed the message to the Western Union boy, who copied it on a telegraph blank. Send it collect, wrote Lewis. The messenger nodded and rode away. Lewis stepped back into the water. The boat's lines were cast off, and Lewis led the way. He knew it was his last appearance with the Swan boat, and he felt a little sad. It was a warm, quiet Sunday afternoon, the last Sunday in September. Lewis played all of his favorite tunes: Lazy River, Beautiful Dreamer, Oh Ever in the Greening Spring. Now the day is over, and then, as the boat neared the dock, he raised his trumpet and blew taps. The last note echoed from the walls of the Ritz and lingered over the public garden. It was a sad farewell. For the people of Boston, it meant the end of summer. For the boatman, it meant the end of the best week of business he had ever had. For Lewis, it meant the end of another chapter of his adventurous life out in the big world, trying to earn enough money to get his father and himself out of trouble. Lewis slept peacefully that night, being very careful that his money bag was safe. Next day, he flew to Philadelphia to keep his appointment with Mr. Lucas, the man who had sent the telegram. Lewis had no trouble finding Philadelphia. Almost anybody can find Philadelphia who tries. Lewis simply rose into the air with all of his things around his neck, and when he was about 1,000 feet high, he followed the railroad tracks to Providence and New London and New Haven and Bridgeport and Stamford and Coscob and Greenwich and Port Chester, Rye, Mamaroneck, and New Rochelle, Pelham, Mount Vernon, and the Bronx. And when he saw the Empire State Building, he veered off to the right, crossed the Hudson River, and followed the railroad tracks to Newark and Trenton and Point South. At 4:30, he reached the Schuylkill River. Just beyond, he spied the Philadelphia Zoo. Bird Lake looked very attractive from the air. It was crowded with waterfowl of all kinds, ducks and geese mostly. Lewis thought he also saw 2 or 3 swans. He circled, picked an open spot, and exactly at 4:52 he splashed down. His trumpet banged against his slate knocked against his metal rapped against his chalk pencil, and his chalk pencil on its string wound itself around his money bag. All in all, the splashdown was quite a commotion. The ducks and geese were not expecting anything like this to happen. A big white trumpeter swan dropping out of the sky loaded with personal possessions. Lewis paid no attention to the other birds. He had a date to keep. He saw a man leaning on the wide railing in front of the birdhouse. Here's the picture. So I'm thinking this might be Mr. Lucas. Let's find out. The man was dressed in a purple suit and wore a Tyrolean hat. His face looked shrewd and wise, as though he knew a great many things, many of them not worth knowing. That must be Abe Lucky Lucas, thought Lewis. He swam quickly over. Cahoo! He said through his trumpet. My pleasure, replied Mr. Lucas. You are right on time. The splashdown was sensational. Welcome to the Philadelphia Zoo, which crawls with rare mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fishes, including sharks, rays, and other fish-like vertebrates. Watch out for wild animals. This place is replete with them. Snakes, zebras, monkeys, elephants, lions, tigers, wolves, foxes, bears, hippos, rhinos, woodchucks, skunks, hawks, and owls. I seldom come here. My work confines me to the throbbing heart of the city among the money changers. I am under great pressure from my work. How was your trip from Boston? Smooth, wrote Lewis on his slate. I made good time. What about my job? A happy question, replied Mr. Lucas. The job will start on October 15th. The contract has been finalized. Your place of employment is a nightclub of great renown across the river, a place of high fashion and low prices, a jumpy joint. You will be called upon to make appearances each evening except Sunday and play your trumpet for the happy customers. Once in a while, you will join a jazz group, Lewis the Swan on trumpet. The pay is very good. My spirits are lifted by thinking about the pay. Wealth and happiness are around the corner for Lewis the Swan and Lucky Lucas, the great of heart. My agent's fee is 10%, a mere bagatelle. How do I get to the nightclub? Asked Lewis. who only understood about half of what Mr. Lucas was saying. "In a taxi cab," replied Mr. Lucas. "Be at the north entrance of the zoo, Girard Avenue and 34th Street, at 9 o'clock on the evening of October 15th, a night that will live in memory. A cab will await your pleasure and will transport you to the club. The driver is a friend of mine. He, too, is under pressure from his work." "Who's going to pay for the cab?" asked Louis on his slate. "I am," replied Mr. Lucas. "Lucky Lucas, the generous of heart, pays for the cab for Louis the Swan. And by the way, I see that you are wearing a money bag, and that is plump with moolah. I suggest from the kindness of my heart that you turn this money bag over to me for safekeeping during your stay in Philadelphia, a place of many thieves and pickpockets." "No, thank you," wrote Lois. "Will keep money bag myself." "Very well," says Mr. Lucas. "And now there is one other small matter I must bring to your attention. Most of the birds that swim in on this luxury lagoon have undergone surgery. Candor compels me to tell you that the tip of one wing is usually removed by the management, a painless operation, popular with zoos the world over. Pinioned is the word for it. I believe it detains the water bird and prevents him from leaving the narrow confines of this public park and rising into the air, because when one's wing is shorter than the other, the balance of the bird is upset. His attempt to take off would be crowned with failure. In short, he can't fly. Sensing in advance the revulsion you would feel towards having the tip of one of your powerful wings removed, I approached the man in charge of birds and laid before him a proposition. He has agreed not to clip your wings. It is arranged. He is a man of honor. Your freedom of movement is assured. You will not be pinioned. But in return for this so great a favor on the part of the management of the Philadelphia Zoo, you are to give a free concert here at the lake every Sunday afternoon for the people of Philadelphia, the peasantry, who come here to refresh themselves. Is it a deal? "Yes," wrote Louis. "Will give Sunday concert." "Good," said Mr. Lucas. "Farewell for the nonce. Be at the north entrance at 9, October 15th. A cab will await you. Play well, sweet Swan. You will be the finest thing that has happened to Philadelphia since the Constitutional Convention in 1787. Louis didn't understand this, but he nodded goodbye to Mr. Lucas and swam off towards the island in the center of the lake. There he stepped ashore, straightened his things, preened his feathers, and rested. He was not sure he was going to like his new job. He was not sure he liked Mr. Lucas, but he needed money badly. And when you need money, you are willing to put up with difficulties and uncertainties. One good thing about the whole business was the zoo itself. It seemed like an extremely nice place in spite of what he had heard about having his wings clipped. Louis had no intentions of having a wing clip. "I'll sock anybody who tries that on me," he said to himself. He was pleased to see so many other water birds. There were many birds of many kinds of ducks and geese. In the distance, he saw three trumpeter swans. They were old residents of the lake. Their names were Curiosity, Felicity, and Apathy. Louis decided he would wait a day or two before making their acquaintance. Bird Lake has a fence around it. When the night came for him to start work, Louis polished his trumpet, put on all his things, flew over the fence, and landed at the north entrance. He was there promptly at 9. The taxi cab was there, waiting just as Mr. Lucas had promised. Louis got in and was driven away to his new job. That is the end of this chapter. So I am wondering how his new job is going to turn out. And I hope that all is well with Louis, but we're going to find out. So tune back in for the next chapter. Everybody, I hope you're enjoying this book. It certainly has been keeping my attention. So please take care.